Welcome. I'm your host, Julie Poole, a law of attraction coach, hypnotherapist, and spiritual teacher. This show is for anyone interested in living their best life on all levels, mind, body, and soul. My aim is to uplift, inform, and inspire you. So let's chat and move you from hoping to having. Hello and welcome to today's show. Today I'm going to be discussing past lives with you and hopefully give you some information that perhaps you didn't know about, like why you have certain fears and phobias, why certain things trigger you, and how this can be related to your own past lives and also that of your ancestors that is within your DNA, picking up some of their stuff. So we're going to discuss that so I can help you to be able to release it and come into your own mastery of your own free dominion of your own energy. So that's what we're going to be chatting about today. I hope you find it helpful. So back in the day, around about, I think 2001, 2002, when I trained to become a hypnotherapist, I did an additional qualification after my hypnotherapy diploma to focus on past life regression. So I have a separate qualification in that, separate to the hypnotherapy, understanding that not all hypnotherapists do past life regression. It was a separate course, but important to have the hypnotherapy basis before you move on to past life regression. And in a way, that's where I want to start. I haven't scripted this. I've got a couple of notes that I want to kind of make sure I bring in, but I'm just going to allow my higher self to guide me along this information for you. So I've been a hypnotherapist for 20 years. And during the first 10 years or so, I did many past life regression sessions, hundreds, and I learned an awful lot about the other side and past lives and life reviews and all sorts of things like that, which we're going to be discussing. But I want to start with many mediums and psychics at the time in the 2000s were offering, and probably still are, past life regression. A little word of caution here. I have experienced many clients who I had to rescue, I had to heal from a very poorly and unsafely done past life regression session. If it's not in the right hands, it can do more harm than good. So if you want to reach out for a past life regression session, make sure you are with somebody who is qualified in it and not just somebody who has the ability to connect with spirit. I no longer offer these sessions, but if you are wanting to do that, be careful who you go to. Most mediums can connect with spirit and the other side and your soul and can take you into a past life, but they're not necessarily trained in how to bring you back safely or how to help you to deal with some of the information that you will be exposed to. So some of the things I've had to rescue, for example, was somebody being shown a past life where they were living a life on a different planet, what they considered to be an alien. It completely freaked them out, totally and utterly freaked them out, and I had to rescue that. So it took a little bit of time to calm the energy down and to release some of the fear. You will also find that when you go into past lives that you will be taken to the end of that life and you will witness your own death, your own passing, some of which is very painful, very uncomfortable to watch. It's not you, it's like you're watching a film of something that happened to somebody else, but that somebody else you know in your being was you. And so it touches you. Now, that touching you can really help to bring in a greater understanding of who you are now. But it can also, as I said, do some damage. So just make sure that it's in the right hands. So let's talk about my first experience with past life regression. It was a decade or so before I was a hypnotherapist. I was still working in the business corporate world, on that hamster wheel, that merry-go-round that we all do, children, home, work, busy, busy, busy. But I meditated, I connected with my guides on a regular basis, I connected with my higher self. And I noticed I was probably around about 28, 29. And I was watching a programme on British television that was very popular at the time called London's Burning. Those of you in the UK may remember it. It was very, very popular. And it was about the London Fire Brigade and them going out and putting out fires. And it was one of my favourite programmes. I watched it every week. It was very interesting. Anyway, during one of those episodes, they weren't able to rescue somebody from the fire. And they were distressed because somebody had died in the fire and been very badly burnt. And I won't go into too much details because it's not very nice. But as I sat watching that episode, I found every part of me in absolute fear. I was having an enormous reaction and I couldn't understand why. I was able to smell the burning flesh. I could feel the flames on me, and it triggered something in me that I didn't understand. And I had to turn it off and go and have a cup of tea and calm down. Anyway, later on, when I went to bed, I connected with my guides and I said, what the hell was that all about? What was that all about? And they said, we'll show you. So they surrounded me with love and light, and I went into a beautiful, calm, meditative space, and I saw myself in 3-4 lifetimes where I was being burnt at the stake during the time in the Middle Ages where anybody who was anywhere near reasonably spiritual or understood herbs or was anything other than the strict Catholic religion of the day was burned at the stake for heresy. And I had several lifetimes where I was very spiritual. I've been around for many, many years, and I've had lifetimes where I've been a spiritual guru or high priestess or wise one, or seer, as they're saying to me. I was called in one lifetime SEER. I was the seer of the village. People would come to me, in other words, the psychic. During Celtic times, during old times, this was absolutely accepted and revered. But during the Middle Ages, it was feared. And I saw myself being burnt at the stake on 3 or 4 different occasions. One was within a group. There was lots of us being burnt, and the other 3 were me on my own being burnt as a witch. At that regression that they were showing me, I didn't feel the fear. I didn't feel the flesh burning. I didn't feel or smell the flesh burning. I just watched in a very calm, observational way. And I was suddenly, how can I describe it? It was like a little switch clicked in terms of my understanding, an aha moment. Oh, okay then, that's why I was triggered by the fire, because I have been burnt alive a few times and it wasn't very nice. And it's not me now feeling that fear. It's a part of my soul or my higher self that's experienced those lifetimes that was feeling the fear. So I just then felt a beautiful wave of loving energy wash through me and all the fear dissolved. And I've never been bothered by it ever since. And that was 30 years ago. So it helped me to understand one of the OCDs, obsessions that I'd had since I was first left home, and I left home very young at 16. But whatever house, property, flat, anywhere I'd lived, I would run through in my mind a escape plan in case of fire. Wherever I lived, I'd kind of look at the windows and the doors and think, how would I get out if there's a fire, and have a bit of an escape route. And later on in my late 20s, when I was working in housing and social housing, we were trained in helping our tenants to prepare themselves as well to have an escape plan. We had the fire brigade come round and said everybody should have an escape plan. This is a very sensible thing to do. And always close all the doors when you go to bed, because if the doors are closed and there is a fire, you have much more time. And I thought, I've been doing this all my adult life, absolutely obsessively. And after I saw those past lives, I understood why. And then everything settled down and it no longer bothered me. And that was lovely. And then another one was heights. I never liked heights. I've never ever liked heights. I love to see a view from a high up place, but I have to feel very safe within the high up place. No problem flying at all, because I'm encased in a plane and I feel safe inside the plane. But it's when I feel precarious, like at the edge of a cliff. I won't go within 6 feet of the edge of a cliff, probably 10 feet. It's like, nope, I'm not going any closer. I went to Paris when I was about 25, and my then husband wanted to go up the Eiffel Tower, and I reluctantly agreed. And what I didn't realise was that the lift was glass, see-through. Frightened me to death. I had palpitations, I had vertigo, my head was spinning, I felt faint. I had to hold on to him and the bars that were around the side to stop myself from falling down. It was quite a big reaction. I didn't like it at all. So after I did this fire one and the awareness there, I asked my guides the next time, what's my issue with heights? And they showed me, and it was within about 5 minutes. It was like watching a little clip of several films or photographs, but they were films being put together, where they showed me a good half a dozen lives where I'd fallen to my death. And the first one I was aware of, I was about 8 years old. I was a little boy somewhere in South America. And I was like a little monkey. I could climb up the trees, and the children, because they were little and light, could get to the higher branches, were the ones that were sent up to get the fruit from the top branches, because they could climb up and knock the fruit down. And then the villagers were at the bottom of the tree catching and collecting the fruit that the children knocked down. And I was up in this tree with, I think there was one other little boy up there with me, and I slipped and fell, and I fell to my death. I didn't feel myself hit the ground, but I felt myself fall, and I thought, okay, there's one. Then they showed me one, I would say probably around the turn of the century, about 1900 in New York, and I was a young man, and working on one of those skyscrapers. Fell to my death there too. And they showed me another 4 or 5 like that. No emotion involved in it at all, just watching, observing from a distance kind of thing. And it was that was the grounding for me, because when I was doing these past life regressions, if you like, I was observing from a safe place. And it didn't hurt me or damage me. It helped me, and my fear of heights dissolved. I wouldn't say I like heights now, but they don't freak me out like they used to. I don't have that emotional need, it's not even a desire, emotional need to pull back hard from the edge of a cliff. I'm wary, but I'm not frightened anymore. So it helped. Now, I worked with White Eagle for I would say, when did he come in? He came in around about 2000 until about 2008 or 9, so about 8 or 9 years. And I'd worked with First Nation guides since I was 17, 18, when I first became aware of my guides. Well, let's go back a little bit. I was aware of my guides from the age of about 10, but I couldn't see them. I just felt them. It was around about 17 that I could first truly see my guides, beautiful, as we would say then, Native American Indian, which of course now we say First Nations, but this was back in the late 70s. And to me, my Indian guide was there to protect me. And he was beautiful, and he stayed with me for a long time. And about 15 years later, maybe 20 years later, White Eagle came in. And I knew White Eagle was more important than my guide, and he introduced himself to me as an ascended master. And then he called me daughter, he called me child, and then he called me daughter. And he took me into a past life where he was the chief and I was his daughter. And it was an honor to see that. And he said to me, I will be with you, helping you to grow, but I will be I can't remember the exact words, a hard taskmaster, because of that connection between us from this past life. Now, at the time, I didn't know how important he was. I had never heard of the White Eagle Lodge. All I knew was this big important chief came in one day, my guide brought him in and said, he's taking over. And I just knew that he was higher level than my guides. So we have guides and masters and ascended masters on the other side. And I just knew that White Eagle was very important. He had this energy that was so powerful, much more powerful than my guide. And I could feel this energy. And he'd come in and around me to help me to grow spiritually, to strengthen my spiritual muscles, if you like. And he worked with me for quite some time, until I was handed over to the angelic realms, and he went. He said that I'm now working on a higher vibration. Higher isn't necessarily better. The shamanic energy, he taught me a lot about shamanic stuff and very earthly, grounded, secure, safe energy. He explained to me that the reason that he was around, he wanted me to strengthen my base chakra, my root chakra, my connection with the earth, Mother Earth, Gaia, the connection with my own sense of safety and security, because I'd experienced so much violence in my younger life. My base chakra was very weak, and he worked with me until he felt that my lower two chakras were strong enough. And then I was introduced, he didn't bring them in, I was introduced to some angels, and I was then working in a different dimension on the angelic realms. So all of this was showing me these past lives. Now, he also showed me that when my mother was pregnant with me, and I was about due, she was about 8.5, almost 9 months pregnant, her brother, whom she was very close to, died. And he died very suddenly. And my mother was grieving hugely for about 3 weeks before I was born. In fact, I was born almost a month late. She was in so much grief that she, even though it was due time, it took another month or so before I came out. And White Eagle was showing me that I was born full of the energy of grief and loss and abandonment and anger, because my uncle had committed suicide and my mother felt very lost and abandoned. They were very close and she was not in a good space. And me being inside her meant that I'd absorbed a lot of that. And White Eagle showed me this and helped me to release it and neutralize it by using the words, I am me and nobody else. All energy that is not mine is free to leave now. Because this was my mother's grief. But through the DNA, I'd absorbed it into me. So a little bit there about ancestral stuff. So let me talk to you a little bit more about fears, phobias. As a hypnotherapist, I did a lot of work with fears and phobias for about 10 years. Again, I don't do this work anymore. I predominantly prefer to teach and share knowledge to help and inspire other people rather than doing lots of these sessions, but I did do for many years. Now, I experienced lots of clients with fears of water, heights, war, and all sorts of different fears. The first place that I would always look is in this lifetime. Let's start with the now. So if somebody had a fear of water, did they fall in a pool when they were little? Were they pushed in? Were they held down? Was there anything that would have created the fear in this life? And if there was, as a hypnotherapist, that's where I would go, and I would clear it, release the trauma, and bring in the sense of safety. But if there was no explanation whatsoever for a fear of water, we would start to go back into past lives, setting the intention, show me where this fear originates and how we can safely and gently release it. And I was shown with many, many clients drownings on ships and boats. You know, we need to remember that in our history, we explored the world in ships. We've discovered America, Australia, all the different trading routes that went for thousands of years across this planet. And majority of sailors couldn't swim. And if the ship went down, they drowned. And we will have had many lifetimes where we've drowned. And so it's to find those. I had several clients who were sailors on ordinary merchant ships, and some that were on the Titanic, some that were on other ships. We found it, we cleared it, and then this overwhelming fear of water would go away. So what I want to say more a little bit about that. Let's just wait and see what they want to say. Okay, so what would happen after we found the incident? So we'd see the ship go down, we would see that we're going down with the ship, and then it's a little bit like a movie where I would fast forward somebody through their death, so you haven't got to take it slow. We would go quite quickly, and then I would see them and explain to them that they are now lifting up into the light. They're lifting out of that body. The body is gone. The spirit, the soul, is lifting up, and we are going up now into the what I call the place between places. Okay, and this is where, when we get up there, we find that waiting for us are our guides and the masters, the loved ones, and we undertake a life review. Now, many of you, I know, will listen to podcasts about near-death experiences, and people talk about the light and the life review. And that is exactly what I have experienced as a past life regressionist when I've taken people to the other side at the end of that lifetime. We don't just see the death and bring them back and go, oh, well, there we go then. We go up to the light, to the life review, and we are in the soul energy. And I would ask the questions, what was the soul learning in that lifetime? What did they choose to grow in? What was their mission? What was their purpose? And that would be explained and discussed until the soul fully understood what that life was about. And then they would see the whole life in context of their actions upon themselves, their actions upon others, and a full understanding would come about. And then a healing would take place. And then the soul would agree with the guides what they wanted to learn next time, or what hadn't been quite learned properly or fully in this lifetime that they needed to go back and finish it off. And then they would show me that same soul coming down into a different body, into a different lifetime, to pick up where they'd left off with unfinished business. So let me give you an example of that. I had a client who came to me because she was afraid of water. And at the time I lived in Lewes in Cornwall, a seaside fishing town. And her husband had bought a boat for them to enjoy. And she was so frightened of water, she didn't want to get in this boat. But she didn't want to upset her husband. So she came to me and said, could I help her clear this fear of water? So we did the past life regression. We found the drowning as a sailor. We cleared that. And we went to the life review, and then I was just about to bring her back because we'd found what she'd booked in for, which was to clear the fear of water. But her guide said, stop, there's something more important than this we need to clear while we're here. Okay then. So they then dropped her down into another life. So I'm seeing this, I'm describing it, and I'm helping her to step into that lifetime. The way I would do that, and you can do this yourself if you want to, you start generally with your feet. What are you wearing on your feet? And how big are your feet? How old are you? Are you a child? Are you a young adult? Are you an adult? Are you an older person? How old are you? What are you wearing on your feet? And then coming up your legs, what are you wearing on your legs? Coming up your body, you're getting a feeling of your clothing, and then you're getting a feeling of your sex, if you're male or female. You get a feeling of what age you are in. Are you in ancient times? Are you in middle age times? Where are you in the world? And the knowledge is just there. It is incredible. You know, she dropped into a lifetime where she's saying, I'm wearing boots and breeches and I'm coming up and, oh, I'm wearing a uniform. I'm a general. I'm a man. I'm a general in the army. I've got lots of gold on me and I'm very important. And we are in battle. I asked her the year, I don't recall it now, but it was 17 something. And where was she in the world? She was in Britain, and she was a general, and there was a battle going on right in front of her. And she was, as the general, standing from a place of safety, watching what was going on. And she was ordering thousands of foot soldiers to go forward into the battle to be slaughtered without a second thought, because she was a rich, powerful general, and these peasant foot soldiers meant absolutely nothing, like ants under her feet, just crush them. There was no sense of responsibility that these are people with lives and wives and children. It just didn't exist. It was just, we got to win this battle. These are cannon fodder. And actually, I think that's where the saying came from, cannon fodder. They don't matter. They're just peasants. They can just be blown up. And thousands, we watched thousands walk towards their death and being blown up with lots of cannons. And there was no remorse. And then she was fast forwarded to the end of her life, still no remorse, and then up into the life review. And during the life review, the guides and everybody was there. It was all very loving. And then hundreds and hundreds of people started walking towards us, because when I do a past life regression, I'm there too. I'm with her, I'm watching, I'm explaining, I'm part of it. And I watched thousands of souls walk into what was almost like an arena. And it was all very peaceful. They were very white lights. It was a lovely energy. And the guide said, do you see all these souls? And there are thousands and thousands of them. And she said, yes. And he said, your actions killed every single one of them. And the awareness suddenly became available to her of the impact our actions have on others. Now, she didn't go into guilt or grief or wailing, because when we are in a life review, there isn't really emotion. There is just a pure understanding, an awareness, an aha. What she did feel was sadness, that she had been so callous and uncaring. It's an awareness in hindsight without the guilt. And immediately she said, I want to understand it more. So we then dropped back down into another life. Roughly maybe 50 years later. Could have been less, but it was around the same kind of time and place. And she was a soldier, and we were again on a battlefield. And this time she was the cannon fodder. And I watched her get blown up. I watched her arm get blown off. I watched her body die. And I watched her coming back up to the light. And then I watched her come back down again into another one and another one and another one. All, in that session, which was supposed to be about an hour, we did something like 7 or 8 lives. And each time she was a different rank in a different army. The very last one was World War II, and she was a soldier there. I also saw her as a soldier in World War I in the trenches, each time being blown up. And eventually, after the World War II one, she came to the light, and the guide said, "You have nothing more to learn from this. You have balanced your understanding." Now, we talk about karma a lot, and many people believe that karma is a debt to be paid. And that isn't my belief or understanding. It is simply a law of attraction of what we resonate on, we mirror back. And as the soul wants to experience both sides of the mirror, we will experience both sides. Not as a punishment or as a debt, but as a growth in awareness. When I brought her back to awareness after that session, she said to me with a very serene smile on her face, "It all makes sense now." And I said, "What makes sense now?" I said, "You only asked for your fear of water, and we had all of those lifetimes with all of that war, death and destruction and bombs and the smell of the bombs." That it was pretty detailed. She was very calm and very serene. And she said to me, "I have always hated war, always been massively against it." She had joined lots of kind of peace type organizations. She'd always had a thing about war. And interestingly, she said, "My husband is the opposite. He is fascinated by war. And in fact, in our attic, he's boarded it out and put tables up there, and he plays, I don't know what you call them, but some people play battles with all of these little toy soldiers and toy tanks and reenact battles with soldiers." And her husband had these huge collections and would spend hours upstairs in the attic with all of these soldiers. And she never wanted to go up there and never wanted anything to do with it. And she found it really interesting that now it made sense why she hated it so much. Now, just finishing that off, that was the end of the story of the past life regression. But interestingly, within, I think, about a year, she came to me for a hypnotherapy session for helping to strengthen her confidence in herself because she was going through a divorce with her husband. She said it was very weird. Almost immediately that she'd done the past life regression and cleared her issues with war, she dropped out of the Peace Corps things that she was involved in. It was no longer resonating for her, and she no longer wanted to be married to a husband. It was done. It was finished. And she didn't understand why, but she just knew it was finished. So we did a soul session, if you like, rather than a standard hypnotherapy session. We did this soul session. We asked the soul, "Why is the marriage over?" And the soul said that in this lifetime, she needed to understand and complete, finally, the learning and lessons around war and death and harming others and being harmed, and that her husband had been chosen for her on a soul level because of his fascination and attraction to war and her repulsion from it. So they had been drawn together to heal and help each other. And that was then complete, and the marriage was done. I tell you, I've learned more from my clients, from the sessions that I've done with them. Not so much from them, but from the experiences that I have gone through with them on the other side. You know, if I do an hour session with somebody, more or less 50 minutes of that is up on the other side. And I am accessing guides, masters, ascended masters, soul energy, higher selves, who are directly communicating. This is what's happening. This is why it's happening. This is what it's all about. And this is where I have my knowledge from that I share with you. I never really had a earthly spiritual teacher. I had my guides and the masters and ascended masters and angels, and these 20 years of hypnotherapy sessions, soul sessions, other side sessions, past life regression sessions, where I have learned and experienced and seen it so much. I've carried out many past life sessions on myself and seen many life reviews and questioned too, what is this lifetime about for me? And it is predominantly to complete, finish off, dot the I's, cross the T's, that I'm more or less there now with my lifetimes on earth. That what they said to me was, they showed me my last life review before I came into this body this time, and they said, you've got 3 more lives to go and then you're finished. And I said, I remember saying it very clearly, I don't want to do another 3. Let's wrap it up in 1. Let's get it all done. And they said, it'll be really hard. There's such a, there's lots of bits to finish off. You're clearing karma, not just for yourself, but for your ancestors. And that's something I want to talk about as well, that you are balancing up any last bits, remaining bits from thousands of lifetimes. And it would take gently about 3 lifetimes. If you try and do it in 1, it'll be very hard for the first half of the life. But you can do it with our help. If you can't do it, don't worry, just do what you can, and then we'll have to come back again to finish off in another life. So that was my agreement on a soul level for this lifetime, to come down and finish off what I need to do. I don't know if I'm on track for this being my last life. I certainly feel, and they say that I've cleared 2 of those 3 lives that were left to do. I might have to come back for a half a life. What is a half a life, you might ask? What does that mean? What is a half a life? All right, so let me tell you my teachings from my spirit team on what a half life is. Of course, we can't be half alive. We're either alive or we're not. What I mean by a half-life is that we tend to assume that we come down onto this planet for 70 years or so. Yeah. And that has been our understanding, that if we get to 80 or 90, all the better, but generally we're going to be here for a good 70 years. So why do people die in their 20s or 30s or 40s or as children, or even indeed as a miscarriage before they're even born? This is what we would call a half-life. You didn't need 70 years to finish off. You didn't need 70 years to complete a lesson. So, let us explain. And this is now my team taking over. It's their words, not mine. Let us explain. There are many of you who choose one single soul growth experience in a lifetime. And that might be to grow in compassion. And so situations will come about to give you experiences which will encourage your growth of compassion. And when that is completed, you can then return to spirit. And that might only take a few years to achieve. You may choose to grow in multiple areas, and that may take many more years to achieve. You may be a new soul who's never before touched the earth. Now, when we say new soul, It's very hard for us to explain this in a way that you would understand. So easier for us to say a soul that has not yet had a lifetime experience on your planet Earth. A soul that has never experienced the density, the weight, the fear, the hostilities, because none of these things exist in the spirit world. That it can be, and often is, extremely hard for a soul to cope. And so we will offer the soul the opportunity to just touch the earth without staying, to just touch it briefly, to feel, ooh, this is what planet Earth feels like. In this case, the souls will come into a fetus that is not planned or meant to come to full-term gestation. You remember we told you this about yours. Yes, they're talking to me now. I've had 3 miscarriages, and in each of those times they explained this to me. So I already know this, but I want to share it with you. So those souls, some of them are new souls, and they're not quite ready to be able to live a life in that density. So they come and just touch the earth, and then they go home. For others, they want to connect with a soul that they would call mum within the mother's womb, but not to experience that connection in this lifetime, but a new lifetime yet to come, or to reconnect with the mother from a past lifetime, to just say, I'm still with you, I'm still around. Does that make sense? Does that help you to understand why some souls are only here? They're saying, no, there's still questions. Okay, another question would be, okay, we hear the question about a child that would pass on, leaving the parents with immense pain. The child has volunteered in this capacity to help the parents experience loss. It is not the child's growth in this case, it is the parents' growth. So let us, for example, explain that the parents chose, as a soul, you understand, to experience the immense grief that a loss of a child will bring about. Quite different from the loss of a parent or the loss of a sibling. Each loss experiences a different impact on the heart and on love. And so these parents have chosen to experience the loss of a child in order to grow in their heart love center. And so a soul will be chosen for the child that is to be lost. So the child was not here to grow or learn or develop, but to give. It was a gift. That soul of the child came into the body of the child that is not long of this earth to help the parents grow in their mission. Then the child goes home, having accomplished its mission, to great celebration on the other side, because it has gifted its knowledge to the parents free, and has in many cases experienced pain and suffering through an illness, and the soul has grown because of that gift. But predominantly that experience was for the parents to experience this, to be able to come out the other side of that grief with a open and expanded heart. Because you see, when you experience this kind of loss, it is quite normal for your hearts to shut down, to close down, because the pain is so immeasurable. And we feel your pain greatly when you experience this. And for some of you, the heart stays closed for the rest of your time on this earth. And that is not what the soul wants. So you come back again and try again and lose another child, and the heart closes until you move through that pain and allow the heart to open up once again, until after many lessons and experiences similar to this, your heart has learned how to stay open and expanded despite pain, despite suffering. This is when your heart is fully in its wondrous light. We hope this helps you understand. Please know that when you come to the other side at the end of your lifetime in this particular body, and you come into our sphere, we are waiting for you with open arms and love and celebration. Even if what you have perceived to be is not a great life, we do not see it this way. We see that the soul has magnificently chosen to incarnate onto this difficult planet for you to grow and has achieved so much. We do not see anything as failure. We do not see anything as bad. There is no judgment, only awareness. This is what you see is what we would call enlightenment. No judgment, just awareness, just acceptance, just a growth of understanding the self, understanding the soul, understanding the soul's place within the I am, the divinity, within all realms, all dimensions, and it is blessed indeed. We wish to share with you another story, and we will let Julie take over now. Okay, thank you. I think the year was around 2004 or 5. I had a client who came to me for past life regression, and she was the first one that didn't know why. She openly said to me, I have no idea why I want this. I just know that I want it. I know that I have to have it. I don't really know why. So I had no starting point. If somebody says they're frightened of water or they've got an issue with something, that's my starting point. So this is the first time that I didn't have a starting point. So I just handed it over to the soul and said, clearly there's a desire here to know something. So I surrender to you. Show us where to go. And it evolved. We opened a door into a beautiful forest, and in the forest was what I would describe now as a cottage-style hut. I would say the year was around about 900 AD. This was very rustic, obviously, and this lady was living alone in this cottage. It was made of straw and like a clay mud and a thatched roof. It was a single room. It was very simple. And in the simple room was a table laid out with many, many dried herbs and potions and lotions and all sorts of things. We came outside the door of this room, and around us in the forest was just the most beautiful nature and animals. It reminded me at the time, they're just reminding me now, it reminded me of Snow White. I remember seeing Snow White when I was a child, and when Snow White found the dwarf's cottage, and all the rabbits and the birds would sit on her, the birds on her hands and the rabbits around her feet. It felt like that this woman who lived in this cottage was at one with nature, that understood the plants, the trees, the leaves, the herbs. She was a herbalist. She was not a witch doctor, but she helped the village, sold them, not for money. There wasn't money in those days, but it was a bartering sort of system. I watched her take some of her lotions and potions and herbs into the nearby village, which actually wasn't that near. It was, I would say, 2 or 3 miles away. We walked through the forest to the village, and people were coming to her. She would go to the village maybe once a month with her lotions and potions, and they would come and buy them for their children and their families of the things that they needed, and in exchange she would be given eggs and food and seeds Many seeds, I'm seeing seeds in her hands. They're showing it me now, even though this is nearly 20 years on. And it was a very simple life. And that was it. There was no drama. There was no burning at the stake. There was no nothing. It was just this very simple life. We moved through the life towards the end, and she was alone in her cottage, perfectly happy, came to the end of her life and went to the light. And then they brought us back. And I said to her, once we were back and awake and back in the room, and yes, hypnotherapists do say back in the room, you are back in the room. I said to her, I'm so sorry, I don't really understand the significance of that lifetime. There was nothing really to see or learn. There was no big life review. There was nothing really to hugely understand. And she just smiled and she said, oh my goodness, I understand this so well. She said, in 3 months' time, I'm going to university to do a degree in herbalism. I don't think it was called herbalism. I can't think of the right word, but it's somebody who would go and study all of the different herbs and potions. And she said, I'm quite nervous about starting this. This is a second career for me. And I was asking Spirit to help me to be able to be good in this course and not blow it and not waste it, because they're very expensive to go to university and do a degree. And she said, and then a few days later, I just got this really strong urge that I want to see you for a past life session. And she said, and now I see why. And I said, oh my goodness, okay. So as Neil Donald Walsh would say in Conversations with God, which is my favorite book of all time, he would say, you have nothing to learn, only to remember. And so I used that line with her. I said, you have nothing to learn, only to remember, because you know all this already, but from that lifetime. And because we touched that lifetime, that knowledge is coming forward. It's not in your awareness right now, but what will happen as you start that course in September, you will find that when you read the books, and on the surface you know nothing about this, that you'll read about a plant and it will come to you so quickly and so easily, because you're not learning something new, you're remembering old knowledge that is ready to come forward. I heard from her a few years later. She'd aced her course and she'd set herself up in business and was thriving. So that was the purpose there of that past life regression session. So it's not always about healing traumas, overcoming phobias, understanding the different facets of your world. It is about allowing whatever wants to come forward, and to do it in a safe and gentle way, and always to do it under the protection of your guides and ascended masters and the higher beings of light, because your soul and higher self know how much of your past lives will help you and how much will hinder you. And we set the intention that we want to grow from these experiences, not for them to put us backwards. All right, so that is what I have for you on past lives. I hope you found it useful and interesting. If you did, do leave a comment or a review or a rating. And thank you for listening. As always, thank you for being here. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this podcast and found it useful, please subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and more, where you can leave up to a 5-star review. If you want to support my work or want to know more, please go to my website, juliepooleonline.com, where you will find details of my new book, From Hoping to Having, available on Amazon worldwide, and more about my work, products and services. The link is in the show notes. Thank you for listening. See you in the next episode.